What's up, everybody? I figure it's time for me to make a new video because I've been thinking and all kinds of stuff is going through my head for years now. It's about time I document it or record it, lay it down, probably end up making an electronic will, which is going to consist of how I came into the world with nothing. Anyway, if some of you have seen my other 3 videos, you'll know which direction I'm coming from. I'm coming from more of a soldier's point of view. So you know that I try to tell people that the African, Black American, Native African, Nubian, we were conquered by Europeans. Yes, Europeans conquered us. And this was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And for them to keep control, they've done so many different things to us to keep us under control, even to this day. So this video is about some of the ways that they've kept us under control and the things that they've used to do that, the weapons that they've used to do that. And we know that some of the weapons were just the basic breaking down of the physical, which was guns, knives, ropes, that kind of thing. And once they saw that they had broken us physically, they also had started implementing the psychological breaking down of the thing that they've conquered. Now, some of you are versed in metaphysics, so you'll know where I'm going with this. And even if you're not really versed in metaphysics, you have to know that there is certain things going on in the English language that is actually causing you to behave the way you're behaving. After all, the English language, from my gathering of information, was from Latin. It comes from Latin, and it was revised over and over again by Roman Catholic monks. Okay, so there's a lot of trickiness in the English language. It's a lot of wordplay. Some words they say have one meaning, but it has a double meaning. And the double meaning is more along the agenda of keeping you psychologically under control. Example, the word nothing, no thing. How can you ever have no thing? Explain to me. Leave me comments. I don't see any comments. I looked on a side note to see if my comments were turned off. And I know how people are on YouTube and on social media. They'll comment by the way my head is shaped. They'll comment about any little thing. There's a lot of miserable people out there. They won't get my message like they don't get the message of a lot of positive people out there making informative videos. They'll leave little hateful messages, but those people who do that are just really telling on themselves. They're just miserable. Their personal lives are messed up. But anyway, leave me a comment. If you can point out to me what that word really means, nothing, or show me, I should say, what is nothing? What is that word? No thing. I don't think that can be. I think that word is an illusion. Because everywhere you go, there's something. Philosophically speaking, as soon as you observe it, it becomes something. That's the power that we have, being created by what we were created by. As soon as you categorize something, something. Now the word something exists because it has to be something. Whatever you call it, that's up to you. That's your prerogative. but the word no thing doesn't exist. Another phrase is not a word, it's a phrase. You string a bunch of English words together, it's just as meaningless as one word. Unconditional love. How can you have unconditional love? By you saying unconditional makes it a condition. So that phrase doesn't exist. So there are many phrases out there that really logically make no sense. It's trickery. It's just to trick you, to keep you hypnotized under a concept, whatever that word or phrase is used for, so you can stay under control by your conqueror, which is in this case the European, being that they're the last ones to conquer. Like I said in my first video, I think the European has gone throughout the world converting everything that it has encountered into what it is. And I'm not saying everyone, but a vast majority of every other ethnicity, or I should say non-European, into European. Now, one of the ways that they're keeping the African American or the black person born in America psychologically under control is with 3 documents. And these 3 documents were supposedly created by the founding forefathers of this country. And by now you're probably knowing what I'm talking about. So let's get into these 3 documents. It's not the details that I want to point out. It's the titles of these 3 documents. You have your Bill of Rights, your U.S. Constitution, and your Declaration of Independence. Okay, so let's look up the Bill of Rights first. That title. And that will explain to you what the document is truly about. Okay, so you have the Bill of Rights. What is a bill? A bill is something, an amount you owe or an amount owed. It doesn't matter how you pay it off, what agreement you made to the person that you owe. That's not my point. My point is that a bill is something that you owe. Like when you go to a restaurant, the waiter brings you your bill. Every month you get electric bill, you get gas bill maybe, you get oil bill, you get all these different kind of bills coming in that you have to pay. Okay, so we've established, and this is not etymology. We're not getting into the etymology where the word came from. We're looking up definitions. Okay, so a bill is something that you owe. Of rights. Rights, we know what that word means. Okay, it's something that you're entitled to do. So when you string this title together, it's really saying we owe, since the person who wrote these documents say, we owe you rights. We owe you rights. It doesn't say we're going to give you rights. So it's like the speed limit. I can compare it to the speed limit on highways. When you're going down the highway in a 55 mile an hour zone or a 35 mile an hour zone, if you notice, if you've been paying attention, and I hope you have, some of you haven't been having accidents, but anyway, a lot of people don't even do the speed limit. You don't do the speed limit. I don't do the speed limit. So that gives the state trooper or the police play in whether or not they want to stop you and ticket you or not. Some days they may let you go 5 miles over the speed limit. Some days they may let you go 10 miles over the speed limit. Some days they may say, no, I'm not going to let anyone go 1 mile over the speed limit, and they pull you over and give you a ticket. So by that same right, when you look at the Bill of Rights, sometimes they will give you rights and sometimes they won't. Now keep in mind that the conqueror, and I've mentioned this before, the conqueror, they know that they're outnumbered. They know that they're outnumbered. The masses of people altogether globally outnumber the people who have conquered. And if they don't comply with our inalienable or our God-given rights, sometimes that will overthrow their system. But for the most part, they continue to march forward with their agenda, owing you. Like they say, as long as you owe me, I'll never go broke. So that's the game that they're playing. And I wanted to mention this before. How many of you seen the movie Doctor Strange? And by the way, that movie was really about what is happening with the so-called black man, black woman, black family, Nubian, black American, Native African. That movie is showing you one of the ways that they have psychologically brainwashed us and how they are controlling us. Okay, so let's move on to the next document, the Declaration of Independence. To declare something is to announce something clearly. That's the definition that I got. You're just announcing something. The Declaration of Independence. To declare, declaration, to declare something, to announce something clearly. Now, let's break down the word independence. Now, this is the tricky part of this document. Dependence means contingent on or determined by. To rely on something is to be dependent. Dependent on something. Like we're dependent on air in our physical state. If you want to cook, you're dependent on fire to cook it, or some form of heated up source to speed up the molecules in the thing you're trying to cook. It could be microwave, still cooking. So to declare dependent means that you're relying on something. Now, here's the tricky part. Is there really such thing as independence, which is the opposite of relying on something? Independence would mean the opposite, which is you don't have to rely on it. But this is not the case with this word, because it's a compound word, independence. Pendence is really a word. So if you break it down, the compound word in, you're in something, like you walk into a store, you get into your car. You're getting into dependency. And in this case, the Declaration of Independence. So they're announcing clearly that you're in dependence of who? The people who wrote the document. So I hope I'm explaining this right. I'm not trying to confuse anybody. I got a little confused when I first saw this. It was like 3 weeks ago. I've never looked at the titles before real good. So it just dawned on me. I knew English is a language of wordplay, but I never saw this before. And like I've said before, these three documents are, I would say, more or less kind of the backbone of the system that we live in America. And a lot of us so-called Africans or Nubians or black Americans, we hold these documents true. Like it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, when they're not really self-evident, because we don't understand. A lot of us don't understand the titles. And also, the Declaration of Independence, it doesn't just pertain to America. I've learned that a lot of Native African countries have a similar document. Okay, so the Declaration is really just declaring in a clear voice that you're in dependence of the person or the people who wrote the document, which is your conqueror. Okay, so let's look at the U.S. Constitution is the next one, it's the last one. Forget the U.S. part. Constitute. To constitute. To constitute means to be a part of a whole. You're going to constitute being part of a whole. Okay, so what that really saying is you're going to be part of the whole, which is the conqueror. You're believing in this document, or you agree with this document, is saying that, hey, I want to be a part of the bigger picture, which is the government that was set up in this country. And I'm not talking about pre-European conquest of these so-called Americas. I'm talking about after the conquering of this continent, America. So all three of these documents are really trickery. And it's to keep you psychologically fighting for something that's not even there. And you can see that. Every time you be discriminated against, these documents go out the window. And for people who don't know, we don't have a constitution anymore. I may have said that in another video, but we don't have a constitution anymore. The Patriot Act took the place of the Constitution. Yes. We don't have Posse Comitatus anymore. That was also written out by an executive order. And that was during the Bush administration. Look it up. It's true. So when you're standing there fighting for your rights or proclaiming that you have rights, yes, you have God-given rights, but this system has pushed God to the side. Now they've created their own God, and this is the reason why you're being treated the way you're being treated. It's not rocket science when you really see what's really going on. I mean, you accept it, and then you have to make the decision on whether you want to keep participating in it or not. That's what this is about. That's why I'm trying to enlighten a lot of people on the fact that you were conquered. Yes, you were conquered. Your forefathers and mothers, and they brainwashed them. They conditioned them both physically and mentally. And now that's why you have your moral standards and your ethics and your whole character is based on what your ancestors have gone through. And so some of us are going to be there to point this out. I've seen so many videos, but I don't hear too many people talking about it like I'm talking about it. Not to make me better. It's just that this is just another perspective that you could look at it from, and hopefully it will stop you from making actual fools out of yourselves, because if you don't comprehend how war works, how the battlefield is played out, then all you're going to do is sacrifice yourself, not knowing why you did it. And in the meantime, you're teaching your children to do the same thing. Now, getting back to the movie, Doctor Strange. If you saw this movie, at the end, Doctor Strange tricks Dormammu, the conqueror of worlds, the so-called villain in the movie. And it's funny that they named it Dormammu. Dormammu sounds to me more like an African name. A name that comes from out of Africa. It doesn't sound like a European name. It doesn't sound like an Asian name. It doesn't sound like a Spanish name. It sounds like an African name. And how did Doctor Strange beat Dormammu? He beat Dormammu with time. He put Dormammu and himself in a time loop. And Dormammu kept killing him, but he kept coming back. And so, like the movie, Doctor Strange says, I'll never win, but I can just die over and over again, and that makes you my prisoner. So Dormammu started begging to be let free, because Dormammu didn't want to stay in that. And so Dormammu said, what do you want? What do you want me to do? And Doctor Strange said, I want you to take your zealots from the earth, leave, and never come back. So people, if you're not ready to retreat, if you don't retreat, if you don't get away from this, if you're the ones that's supporting this. And I've already said, like Lawrence Fishburne told Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, the machine world is using you as a battery, as a source of power. You take the batteries out of the machine that needs the batteries, the machine is just a paperweight. So in essence, you're creating the problem for yourself. You have to unplug. You have to retreat. That's the solution. Thank you.